Hey everyone, it's Tim Holtz and I'm here at Sizzix headquarters, and wait until you see what I am going to share with you. This is part 3 of a series of videos that I'm doing about the highlights for chapter 1. And the creativity for this chapter just really unbelievable. I would say that this mix that I'm going to share with you today, you can see here, has a little bit of an eclectic kind of funky vibe, very atomic. There's some robots, even some dinosaurs in this, but wait until you see the creativity that will evolve from all of this. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to talk about the atomic elements. Now, these are just very, very cool, very iconic graphics, but I love the ability to have these shapes, and in this inlet set you get a whole variety of these very, very fine detailed elements that you can layer and stack on your project. I just think it has such a great throwback vibe, don't you? Very cool. Now you can see here with these dies, you can also cut, even thin dies will cut thin layers of fabric as long as you have some type of binding behind it. But I really like how you can change up the color and give this a whole different kind of funky vibe. Now, speaking of funky vibe, wow, sparkle at its finest. Take a look at that. Just adding some glitter on there, using these atomic elements are just really fun way to create that classic vibe. Now, with the atomic, of course, we can also do some home dec. I'm going to bring these pieces in just to share with you what's really nice about a lot of these elements. The great thing about these elements is that it really does create this cool look. Just take a look at that kind of funky vibe, and you can make all of these different parts and pieces. These happen to be just little panels, but you can take these, nest them together, make coasters out of them, put them on your walls. I just think that is what's great about the timeless nostalgia of the atomic elements. Now, when it came to doing some crazy things, as soon as I got into the atomic vibe, I started kind of thinking, I don't know, space age, if you will. So then what was next? Well, robots, of course. I wanted to get very robotic, but these guys aren't your average robot. They are designed, of course, to mix and match and to create some funky pieces. And the nice thing about Robotic is all of these different shapes are individual dies, so you can mix and match and customize your own robot, whether you're going to do kind of the light bulb head, the filament, it's got little gears and buttons and gauges, little feet. So this one has, I think, a very kind of stoic steampunk vibe, but you can also get totally playful and whimsical by just taking those shapes and, of course, changing those in with colored cardstock and really making something playful. Or you can just throw caution to the wind, and look at this. You can just totally flip them around. Here the light bulb head is now upside down. That's the body of this guy. The gears now become his eyes. And how fun is that, just to take all of these shapes for Robotic? I think these are going to be great for steampunk, but also for kids' invitations and parties. They're just really cool and playful. Now, when it comes to cool things, you know that sometimes I like to push the envelope, right, when it comes to designing dies. And I think I've done it on this one. So this particular one is called Retro Repeat. All right, and what this is actually designed to cut 4 different repeat backgrounds. What does that mean? Well, I need to share that with you and kind of show exactly what I'm talking about. This is the die itself. This is just one of the dies, all right? And the whole thing about Retro Repeat is it's going to allow you to cut a continuous pattern however big or wide as you want to. And here's how it works. You'll see on the die that one side just has the shape itself outlined. And that is part of the metal, but it's just the shape, there's no blade. And then it has the actual blade of that pattern. And what you do is you start it out on your cardstock. Now, when you start it on your cardstock, you want to make sure that you have this tab, this area that I call it the head start, right? You need a place on your cardstock that you're going to make your first cut. And the reason we want to make our first cut is actually going to bruise the paper. Can you see that? It creates a little bit of bruising. So when we go and do our actual card or project, you will cut this off. But once we start and we make our first pass, you then shift the die over, lining up that window in with your first cut. Okay, and it's going to line right up. You're going to be able to see through the die, so you can see right where it lines up perfectly, and you're going to make another cut. And you're just going to keep going. When you're done, you're just going to move it over. It lines up and it almost kind of pops into place. You can see that. You're going to cut it again, and you repeat this as many times as you want. So the nice thing about these background dies, I can just use it as a border. I can make a wide background for a tag. I can make a full background for a card. And the best part is I get 4 different backgrounds in this Retro Repeat set. Pretty cool, right? So you can see that whether you're using it in a background for even for florals, or I'll go back to this card and you can see using that background in the Robotic. The nice thing is you're no longer committed to having an all-over background texture. You can just use parts and pieces for Retro Repeat. Pretty fun, right? All right, now speaking of fun, I'm telling you, this one I just wanted to just have fun with this. So what's better than dinosaurs, prehistoric ones, something to create a little bit of a playful vibe. And I really like this because here you can see that these dinosaurs also have layers where you can put their legs on there to give them a little bit of dimension as well as the heads. And I think it's really nice because you can see for a kid's birthday party, the dinosaur is really, really fun. You can also use these prehistoric guys to create mixed media backgrounds by just gluing these down, layering over the top with some gesso and some paint, maybe do some sanding. I love the fact that this was cut out of some thin suede, because remember, thinlits, as long as the material's thin, you're able to cut through that. I think that's fun. I like the idea of popping in your favorite alphanumeric in there as well to spell something out. But you can see here that these pieces really are fun. They just add some nice little playful element, not too big, not too small, but also I think something perfect for child's cards as well. I'm a child at heart, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, in addition to the prehistoric, I wanted a weird organic shape, and there's no other way to describe it other than a weird shape, and it's called Splat. And what it is, it's a series of these kind of, I don't know, splatty little openings. And the nice thing is that you can cut them and layer them to create unique effects on your cards. If you layer them, you can see that you can actually reveal each layer underneath. This one was done with cork, metallic paper, alcohol ink underneath. You can also take those splats and you can stack them. So if you don't want to recess them, you can cut out these weird splats out of different colors and actually dimensionalize them with some foam tape and just cut them off on different areas of your card. I think that's just kind of cool and kind of fun and, well, just kind of funky. I think that's great. Now, in addition to all of these funky things, I will never forget steel rule dies because I always want to have something that I can really cut thick materials. And as a true steampunk lover, this die has me so excited. This is called Voltage, and what it does is it cuts out this really cool gauge, and the gauge has a window in there. It's got that little needle in there, and you can cut this out of chipboard. You've got window in there that you can add acetate. You've got this base shape, but in addition to the shape, you also have these elements. Can you see these elements in the end that just kind of look like nuts and bolts? This is actually part of the die. It's a circle and a hexagon that is designed to stack to really give that authentic hardware look. They look real, don't they? Very cool, just cut out of metallic cardstock or painted. You can see here that you can use this Voltage for just something fun like Full of Thanks. Very, very neat to put it on a card. You can see that wood background from lumber, but there again, you can take those bolts and you can add those to that voltage gauge as well. Just think it's really, really cool. I like that in addition to the window, we also have the little arch. So see, totally different styles from this, but very cool and very steampunk. Now, another steel rule die. Man, am I happy about this one. This one's really neat. This is Timekeeper, and the nice thing about Timekeeper, take a look at this. We actually have all of the numbers on a clock. And in addition to the numbers, we also have these ornate hands, the hour and the minute hand. I love this. Now, I did a clock die years ago for Sizzix. It was a little bit more distressed and grungy, and man, have we come a long way in steel rule die to give you all of that detail that we can get out of chipboard. Pretty impressive, right? Now, of course, the nice thing about dies like this is that we can also create something very dimensional, very 3D. So take a look at this. I love the fact of using Timekeeper on a shadow box to frame a photograph. Isn't that nice? Really, really cool. And then, of course, using some die cuts as well, just to add texture to the background. This is the organic that we released in Chapter 1. But I just think it's really fun to have your die cuts part of your kind of home deck. And speaking of that, where do you see some of these projects, man? They're just so cool and so crazy. This jar, this is done, of course, with the Atomics Big, because in addition to these elements that we have, we also have a steel rule die of some of these larger atomic base shapes. And these are really fun because, as you can see, we can cut chipboard, we can stack these up, we can put this on top of a mason jar, and here we've just used those thin dies to cut vinyl. Very playful, great gift, but also very perfect for parties, I think. Now, I got to finish up with these two because, man, they're just fun. I've been playing with them, to be honest. I just think they're really cool and unique. Take a look at Dino Land. This is done with Prehistoric, and you can see here by cutting several layers of cardstock or thin chipboard, you can actually make these dimensional dinosaurs. Now, how they stand up? Well, this is using the Landscape Bigs die from the Village series to cut out these trees. So just using that stand from the bottom of the trees also created a stand for these dinosaurs. So it makes such a great kind of play scene here. You can see the atomic dies, those Bigs dies at the top. Look at these splats. Here the splat was used over here for a watering hole. On the other side, a tar pit. Isn't that great? And you can see the trim right here. That is the retro repeat. So all of these dies can be combined to create such cool works of art. You can even create a shadow box. Take a look at that. Wow, using all of those dies, that Prehistoric, just building a scene inside a wooden tray. I just think that the possibilities are endless when it comes to using die cuts from Sizzix. And that is why I'm so excited with all of the amazing designs in Chapter 1. So be sure, if you haven't seen Part 1 and Part 2 of this series, check them out.